2024 has been one of the hardest years for comic valuations there's been in recent memory. I want to travel all the way back in time to the early portion of this year, February 2024 to be exact, where I put out a video entitled Top Undervalued Comics of 2024. Now, in that video, I gave you guys the optimal grade point average, in my opinion, where I thought the book can be had for the best price. With that said, let's check out these prices today and see how I did. We're going to start off today talking about this book right here. It is a copy of Fantastic Four, number 52, and the first appearance of the Black Panther. Now, back in February, I said the optimal grade for purchasing this book, and what I mean by that is you could have gotten the best deal at a CGC 4.0, because back then it was averaging around $408. Today, how did I do? The average sale, the 90-day average according to GPA, was right under that at $382, down 6% so far for this year. The one thing that's really made me change my tune a little bit on this book is I was recently on eBay, and the amount of copies of this book for sale right now on eBay is absolutely crazy. Up next is a copy of Iron Fist number 14 and the first appearance of Sabretooth. If you guys remember, this book was all over the Hot 10 Comics of the Week breakdown earlier this year, but in February, I told you the optimal grade for this book was a CGC 9.0. Back then, the average for this book in that grade was roughly $600. Today, that 90-day average sits at $522, down 13% over that time frame. I will say this, I love the character of Sabretooth, and I still love this book, but when we're talking about Bronze Age keys, guys, don't forget, there's a lot of copies out there, and a lot of people putting these books up for sale still, which is driving the price down. You want to talk about criminally undervalued? How about this book right here? It is a copy of Marvel Premiere number 15, the first appearance of Iron Fist. Back then in February, the optimal grade I said for this book was a CGC 9.0, which back then was sitting at roughly $288. Today, coming in, the 90-day average sits at only $274, modestly down 4% over a year. I got to tell you guys this, I still love the character of Iron Fist. I do think this book is undervalued, but another Bronze Age key that really has come down over the past year. Let's talk about a little Silver Age, and let's talk a little bit DC. Everything's been Marvel so far. But back in February, I loved this book, and I still love it today. It is a copy of Detective Comics number 359, and the optimal grade at that time, where I thought you could have got the best deal, was a CGC 5.0, which is roughly sitting at $552. Today, I don't see this book listed for sale as often as I did earlier in the year, but the average sale, according to GPA right now, is only sitting at $545, down only 1% over that time frame. I have to ask you guys, why do you think this DC book, this Silver Age DC book, is only down 1%? I want to hear comments down below on what you think. Stick with DC, but hop over to the Bronze Age to talk about one of my favorite Batman covers of all time. It is a copy of Batman number 251, and this classic cover by the late, great Neil Adams. But not only that, we know this issue to be the quintessential issue where the Joker is reborn as a homicidal maniac. Back in February, I said the optimal grade for this book was a CGC 5.5 with an average sale of $385. Well, guess what? We finally have our first uptick with this book averaging out right now at $396, up 2% over the average. So I have a theory why this book is up over that time frame. Classic covers have been super hot, a little bit more so than first appearance books. So let's stick with classic covers. Hell, let's stick with Batman, and hell, let's stick with the Bronze Age. Here we have a copy of Batman number 227 in this great homage to Detective Comics number 31 from the Golden Age. Now, back in February, I said the optimal grade for this book, where you could have gotten the best deal, was a CGC 5.0, which was averaging only $425. Now, before I give you the 90-day average right now, I remember, and I know I told you guys this, every live sale, this book would come up for sale, and it would fly within a matter of seconds. With that said, the average sale right now for a CGC 5.0 is roughly sitting at $578, up a crazy 36% earlier in the year. Who said all books are down in 2024? Certainly not Batman, certainly not classic covers. So we're going to stick with classic covers, except we're going to switch it over to the Marvel side now. It is one of my favorite books of all time. It is a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 50, the book I call the trifecta. This classic cover by the late great John Romita Sr., classic storyline Spider-Man No More, and of course this is the first appearance of the Kingpin. Now back in February, I said the optimal grade for this book was a CGC 4.5, right at mid-grade. It was selling for only $540 on average. Today, that 90-day average for this book, I'm happy to say, is up 13%, sitting at only $609. So again, what I've been saying along this video, classic covers have really taken off. This one being a phenomenal cover and also has some other things going for it as well. One of my favorites, still I think at $600 is still undervalued. Let's talk about another John Romita Sr. classic cover. It is a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 41 and the first appearance of the Rhino. Not only do I think this book is undervalued still, it is definitely underappreciated. Last year, February of 2024, I said the optimal grade for this book was a CGC 6.0, selling on average for only $475. I am sorry to say right now, the 90-day average of this book is sitting at $438, down 7% over the past year. The one thing I can say is if you're a Spider-Man fan and you own this book, just hang on to this one. I don't know why this book continually gets beaten down price-wise. Let's stick with Spider-Man and let's stick with underappreciated. How about this book? Amazing Spider-Man number 31. This is the first appearance of Gwen Stacy and also the first appearance of Harry Osborn. Now, back in February, I said the optimal grade for this book was a CGC 4.0. Let's not forget, guys, these are Silver Age books, and a 4.0 is a pretty decent grade. Back then, the average sale price for this book was roughly around $270. I'm happy to say the average sale for a 4.0 right now, the 90-day, according to GPA, is sitting at $277, up roughly 2% over the past year. Again, I cannot tell you why this book is sitting at roughly the same price. Double key, in my opinion, decent cover. If you're a Spidey fan, I still think this book is definitely a steal at this grade point average. So we have to talk about this book right here. It is a copy of Fantastic Four number 48 and the first appearance of the Silver Surfer. You guys remember over the past 3 or 4 years that this book has really taken a beating. So much so that the early portion of this year, I had to put it on this list, and I said the optimal grade was a CGC 4.0, which was roughly sitting at only $849. Today, that 90-day average is not far off, sitting at $866, up 2% over that time frame. The one thing I am going to point out to you guys, do you think the decline in this book is finally over? I think there's roughly around 10,000 copies or so on this CGC census, with a ton more raws out there. So again, I want to hear your comments down below. Is this book done going down? About 48, then we have to talk about 49. It is a copy of Fantastic Four number 49 and the first appearance of Galactus. This is also the second appearance of the Silver Surfer. Back in February, I said the optimal grade for this book was a CGC 4.5. Back then was sitting at only $480. You guys know I love this grade point average for Silver Age books. Today, the 90-day average for this one is only $467, down just $13 and 2%. So again, I always say if you're going to buy 48, 49, or 50, you might as well buy the trio. And right now it looks like they're holding steady over the past year. So since we're talking about the trio, let's talk about FF number 50, this classic cover by the great Jack Kirby. What have we said so far in the beginning of this video? That classic covers have really done well over the past year, more so than first and second appearances. Early this year, February, I said the optimal grade for this book was a CGC 5.5, which was sitting at only $243. Today, I'm happy to say the average sale for a 5.5 is $283, up $40 and up 16% over this past year. Again, more proof that classic covers are on fire. Since we're talking about undervalued comics, we have to talk about this book, and I had it in this video from the early portion of the year. It is a copy of Avengers number 1, the first team appearance of the original Avengers team. Now, back then, a CGC 2.5 was roughly selling for $1,920. I always think lower grades for high-priced book, especially in the 1.5 to 3.0 range, really can be had for great deals. I'm happy to say the 90-day average of this book as it sits right now is $2,101, up 9% this year. But keep in mind, presentation does matter when we start talking about higher dollar value amounts for these Silver Age keys. So don't go out and just buy any 2.5 if you're looking to own this book. Buy the one that presents the best. You're always going to pay more for a book that looks better over one that doesn't. Sticking with the Silver Age and jumping over to DC this time, how about a criminally undervalued book? It is a copy of Showcase number 22 and the first appearance of the new Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Back then, I said the optimal grade for this book where you could have gotten the best deal was a CGC 3.0 sitting at only $2,400. I'm happy to say this one is up 14% in nearly a year, sitting at $2,752. It was only a matter of time before this book started to go up a little bit. I'm happy to see that it did over that time frame. But does it have anything to do with the new DCU? That we did get a casting for Hal Jordan in an upcoming DCU project. Last book that was on that video is a massive one. It is a copy of Fantastic Four number 5 and the first appearance of Dr. Doom. Now, there's been a lot of news regarding this book. Of course, we got the announcement that Robert Downey Jr. is returning to the MCU to take on the role of Dr. Doom. We all don't know how that's going to work out, right? With that said, the optimal grade back in February, according to me, was a CGC 3.0, which could be had at the time for $4,834. I'm going to give you the 90-day average for this book as it stands right now, and it is $5,200, up 7% over that time frame. But you see that asterisk right there. The last sale for a 3.0, according to GPA, was in July, right roughly when we got that announcement or right before. I cannot believe we haven't had a CGC 3.0 get recorded by GPA. But as we all know, there have been a ton of copies of this book for sale on Instagram, and none of those books actually get recorded by GPA. Ton of copies for sale. I actually just sold my CGC 2.0 signed by Stan Lee for $5,000, and I saw another one sell on Elite Comics 11, a 2.0 signed by Stan Lee, for an insane $3,700. So this book is still coming down. Too many copies came up for sale too quickly. But as you guys know, I'm always a buyer of this book, and right now I still think it's criminally undervalued. So that was a little bit of a walk down memory lane from earlier in the year, and there's a lot of information to unpack here. One, classic covers have been super hot over the past year. That seems to be the main takeaway from this video. The second thing is books are still coming down in price, right? They're kind of like floating around that average, some down 10%, some down 2%, 1%, up 3%. That's what I call a little bit of a bottoming process on a lot of these books. Some of them, like classic covers, Batman 251, FF50, Batman 227, definitely up enough where I think, hell, if you want to own these books and keep them for the long term, I think they're good buys. With that said, I'm not telling you to go out and buy any of these books. I'm telling you what the price data has shown us over the past year. Hope you guys enjoyed this video because I do plan on doing another one regarding a video I did earlier in the year, January actually, about every book that I'd buy from $50 all the way to $50,000. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is Lawrence over at Mighty Comics Collectibles saying thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.